Today in our 2017 GMC Canyon, we're going to be installing Derale's 8000 series transmission cooler kit, part number D13503. In conjunction with that, we'll be using Derale's snap-in radiator adapter for GM vehicles, part number D13035. And this is what our transmission cooler is going to look like when it's installed. We have our fascia removed to make it easier to see. It'll be mounted in any location you'd like, but this is the closest location to where you hook up your lines. This auxiliary cooler is going to help keep your transmission fluid at normal, lower operating temperatures. So when you're hauling heavy loads and putting more stress on your transmission, that fluid temperature is not going to rise up and cause potential transmission damage. It's going to keep that temperature more regulated, so it'll be at normal operating temperature, even under the most stressful conditions. This is going to work with your existing transmission cooler. It hooks right in line with it on the return side to provide additional amounts of cooling. We'll begin our installation here at the front of the vehicle. Under the hood, we're going to need to remove this top plate here by removing several push pins. To remove the push pin, you'll slide your flat-bladed screwdriver or trim panel remover tool, pop up the center, and then the entire pin will pop out. We'll do the same thing for the rest of our push pins. Now that all the pins are removed, you'll just lift the panel off and set it aside. Underneath that panel, you'll find some Torx screws that we'll need to remove. There's a total of 6, 3 on each side. You use a T15 Torx socket to remove those. We're going to remove 6 Torx screws from inside our wheel well. We'll have 3 down the side and 3 along the bottom. You may need to turn the wheel to get access to these. And here on the inside, you'll find 3 bolts that we'll need to remove using a 7mm socket. Then you'll remove the 1 bolt located at the bottom corner towards the inside, just behind your fender liner. You'll also use a 7mm socket for that. We'll now need to remove the 4 bolts that hold on our undershield. You use a 15mm socket to remove those. There'll be 2 towards the rear and 2 towards the front. And we can set this aside. Underneath our panel, you'll find a 10mm bolt towards the front we'll need to remove. And there's one just like this on the other side. We're now in the front of the vehicle, just underneath the grille. We're going to need to go through the slits using a 10mm socket and extension to remove 2 bolts, 1 on each side, through these openings. We're now ready to remove our fascia. Starting on one side, you'll want to peel outward on the edge. This comes out and down at the same time. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Then you want to disconnect any wiring that you may have behind it, such as our fog lights that we have here. You'll press in on the tab and just pull rearward. There's one of those on each side if you have the fog lights. And now we'll set our fascia aside where it won't get damaged. We now need to remove the air shutters in front of our condenser and radiator. We'll remove the trim piece first, located here. If you look around, you'll see some pins located here and on top. We'll need to remove all those pins. And now we'll set this aside. We'll now need to remove all the 10mm bolts that go around our panel here. There's a total of 8. We'll need to get our electrical wiring off so we can pull our panel off. So you can pinch it here at the top, pull it down. It's also attached here with a push pin, so you'll just want to get behind that with your trim panel remover and pull it out. We'll now remove the air deflector off down here. There's going to be 3 push pins on the top. And our last bolt's going to be behind that panel, just here. We'll now lift up on the tabs located here, pull outward. There's one on this side as well. And our panel will fall forward. We'll need to disconnect the electrical connector located over here. Push out on the locking tab, press in on the lever to release it. Then we'll need to pry it off using our trim panel remover tool. We can now set this aside. We'll now prepare our transmission cooler for installation. We want to remove the caps off of each end of our cooler. And we'll take the hose that comes in the kit, and we're going to slide one end on our cooler. It's a little difficult to get on. You can use some lubrication. We're just using a little silicone spray, and that'll help the hose slide on easier. You'll take the other end of your hose, and that's going to go right on the other side, making a loop. We'll now install our hose clamps. You use a 1/4-inch socket. We'll loosen the clamp up. We'll slide it over our hose, and then we'll tighten it back down. I like to position the hose clamp so it's facing in this direction, away from our back piece, so we know that the clamp end's not going to get in the way of anything. You also want to make sure that you're not down at the bottom of the hose, and you're also below the bulging area where it slid over the end. We'll do this on each side. We'll now take the mounting clips that come with it. You're going to take the button end, that's going to be towards the front of the radiator. We're going to slide it through our bracket here. And on the back side, we'll take the foam piece that comes with it. We're going to peel back the adhesive. That's going to poke through with the adhesive side facing towards the radiator. We're going to slide it down and stick it up against the back. We'll repeat that for the remaining 3 outer holes. Now with all 4 in place, we can mount our transmission cooler onto our condenser and radiator here. We're going to be putting it in this upper passenger side area because our hose for our transmission line that we're going to tap into is located here on this passenger side. That way we'll know that we have enough length of hose to do what we're trying to achieve. So we'll line it up and pass it on through. When you're doing this, you want to be careful not to puncture anything. So if you feel any resistance, excessive resistance, you want to stop and change your spot. It's probably better not to go all the way through so you've got yourself some room to work with. Just kind of line that up to where it looks like you're about straight, and you'll just repeat that process. Now that they're all pushed through, we're going to need to put our locking nuts on the other side. You want to make sure that the Derale name is facing away when you slide them on. So they'll go on in this direction. They simply just push into place. And you'll want to work that all the way down until it's flush up against the radiator. You'll repeat this for the remaining 3.
When you're cutting them off, you want to cut it off as close to the pin you pushed on as possible, so that way the fan won't contact them and cause any noise. You're going to do this for each one.
We'll now take the looped line that we have on our transmission cooler, we'll cut it to length, so there'll be 2 pieces coming off of it, and it's going to connect in line with our transmission line here. This is the return side of our line. If you were curious how I knew that this was the return side, if you just operate your vehicle and let it run and feel both this transmission line and the other one, they're both located down there. It's a little bit easier to grab them. The hotter line is going to be the line coming from your transmission to your radiator, and the cooler line is going to be the one going from the radiator, returning back to the transmission. You can see this panel here blocking our entry point, so we're just going to trim this panel. So I'm going to start by just kind of pushing it out so we can make our trim. So we're just going to make a diagonal cut from this opening here down to this opening here. Now we've got an access point to get our hoses run. Before I cut my hose, I want to make sure I've got enough length. So I'm just going to slide it on through over to where our other line is on our radiator. And now that we've got that ran through, we're just going to tuck it out of the way for now, and we'll disconnect our transmission line. To disconnect the line, you'll first pull back the plastic covering so it just pops off. And you can just slide that back. And there's going to be a small clip on there. Now it's very important when removing this clip that you keep it covered with your hand. So I've got my pick started behind the clip. Now I'm going to place my hand over it because once this clip fully releases, it can shoot out of there, and you don't want to lose this clip. You have to have it. So I'm going to get my hand in place over the clip. Once you've got your clip off, this is what it will look like. So if it shoots off, this is the clip that you're trying to find. Here's our GM adapter that's going to go into our radiator coming from our hose. So we're going to do a quick test fit just to make sure that everything's going to line up properly. This just pops out. Hold them up real quick just to make sure you've got the right one. Ours look to match up. So we're going to stick our hose back in so we don't lose too much fluid. Just a little bit ran out there. We'll now cut our lines to the appropriate length. So one line's going to need to attach to our adapter and go into the radiator. The other line is going to slip over our existing transmission line, and we'll clamp it down with a clamp. So we're going to cut one side slightly longer than the other, since one just needs to wrap around into there, and the other's going to connect to the hose there. So not too much longer, just a little bit, about like that. And when you're cutting this, you do want to be sure you use a hose cutter. This way you cut it clean and square. We'll start by installing our adapter into our shorter hose. So again, you're going to want to use some lubricant to make the installation easier. After you push it in, you don't want to go all the way to the edge here, because this does have to seat inside of your radiator, and the clip goes between the radiator fitting and the back side of this fitting. That's what holds it in and keeps it from popping out. So we got it out about roughly a ½ inch there. We'll install our hose clamp on it now. I'm going to install it in this orientation. It really doesn't matter how you install it. This one just looks like it'll give me the most room to work with. We'll tighten it down with our 1/4 inch socket. And since this adapter is made of plastic, you don't want to overdo it. So we're just going to get it nice and snug. Next, we'll be taking the line out of our radiator, and this needs to slip in right behind it. You want to try and do this as quickly as possible so you don't lose too much fluid. It's not a bad idea to place a drip pan down below to catch any fluid that leaks down. So we're going to quickly pull our line out and slide our new one in. The clip just pushes right back on. It's important that these ears seat down inside the grooves. There's going to be a total of 4 grooves located on that clip. You want to make sure that each of these edges go inside of a groove. And now it's snapped in place just like that. You can see it's completely flush, and we cannot pull our hose out. Now the other side of our line is going to connect to our original transmission hose. So we're going to lubricate the ends here and slip our hose over the line. We'll now take our hose clamp, we'll slide it over our transmission line, and we'll tighten it down. We're not going to use a zip tie to hold this line here in place. We're going to zip tie it right to the wiring harness here. This will keep our line in place and out of the way from contacting any moving objects such as our belts and pulleys there or our fan shroud. Now you want to check all of your other lines and zip tie those if necessary. And now to test it out and make sure you don't have any leaks, this is a good time to start your vehicle and check your lines. And now with everything running and there's no leaks, you can reinstall the rest of your fascia in reverse order that we took it off. And with everything back in place, we're ready to hit the road. And that completes our installation of Derale's 8000 series transmission cooler kit on our 2017 GMC Canyon.